Imagine you're flying at 35,000 feet, comfortably seated in the luxury of first class. The cabin lights dim softly, the hum of the engines a gentle background lull. The flight attendants glide down the aisle, offering an exquisite menu curated for the world's elite. You expect nothing but the best, a culinary experience worthy of the high price tag. But what if something as simple as a meal rejection triggered an event so explosive? It shook the entire airline industry to its core. This is not just a story about a meal. It's about power, pride, and the fine line between professionalism and personal vendettas at 40,000 feet. Our story begins with one man, a CEO known for his sharp mind and even sharper temper. His name is Alexander Drake, a titan of industry whose reputation for ruthlessness is matched only by his demanding standards. On what should have been a routine business flight, a seemingly small conflict over a first-class meal ignited a chain of events that no one aboard the plane could have anticipated. Stay with me as we dive deep into the high-stakes drama, uncovering how a rejected dish escalated into a shocking showdown that led to a crew-wide dismissal minutes after landing. A move that stunned employees and passengers alike and sent ripples across social media and business circles worldwide. The early morning sun cast a golden glow over the sleek fuselage of the private jet as it prepared for takeoff from New York's JFK Airport. Inside, the mood was calm but charged with anticipation. Alexander Drake had boarded last, flanked by his personal assistant and a small entourage. Known for his punctuality and perfectionism, Drake had already reviewed the flight's itinerary and the menu selections twice. The first-class cabin was a study in elegance. Plush leather seats, crystal glasses, and linen so fine they might have come from a five-star restaurant. The flight attendants had prepared meticulously for the CEO's preferences, having been briefed on his dietary restrictions and favorite delicacies. Everything was expected to proceed smoothly, as it always did on his travels. But beneath the surface of this seemingly flawless operation simmered tension. The crew had heard stories about Drake's temper and exacting nature. Some had exchanged nervous glances. Others avoided making direct eye contact. The atmosphere was polite, but a faint undercurrent of anxiety hummed quietly among the staff. As the plane ascended, the lead flight attendant, Carla, approached Alexander with the carefully curated menu. She explained the specials for the day: a truffle-infused risotto, a pan-seared sea bass, and a rare Wagyu beef selection. Drake listened, nodding curtly, but then surprised everyone by asking for something off-menu. He requested a simple dish, a classic Caesar salad, but with one critical twist: the dressing must be prepared freshly and served without any anchovies. Carla nodded, confident in her ability to deliver. The kitchen was informed, and preparations began. Minutes later, when the salad arrived, Drake took a bite and immediately frowned. The dressing, he claimed, tasted off. It was either not freshly made or contained anchovies, which he absolutely despised. He summoned Carla, and with a cold, unwavering tone, he pointed out the mistake. Carla apologized and promised to have the chef prepare a new salad immediately. At this moment, other passengers started to notice the exchange. Some whispered. Others exchanged curious glances. Drake's demeanor was no secret. He expected perfection, and he wasn't afraid to make that clear. The revised salad arrived. Drake took a cautious bite. Again, he shook his head in displeasure. This time, he accused the crew of incompetence and disrespect. The tension in the cabin thickened. Carla tried to maintain professionalism, but Drake's insults began to cut deeper, calling the crew inadequate and unworthy of serving in first class. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. The flight attendants exchanged worried looks. The captain, monitoring the situation from the cockpit, prepared for what he feared might become a major disruption. But the situation didn't end there. Frustrated and humiliated, Alexander Drake's anger erupted. He stood abruptly, his voice ringing through the cabin. Passengers quieted, turning to witness the unfolding drama. The CEO declared that the service on this flight was unacceptable and that such negligence could not be tolerated. Carla, fighting to keep calm, explained that they had done their best to accommodate his requests under the limitations of an airborne kitchen. Drake dismissed her explanation, his tone growing harsher. Then, in a move that stunned everyone, Drake announced he was going to report this to the airline's headquarters immediately upon landing, but more than that, he threatened to take personal action against the entire crew. "If this is how you treat your most important passengers," he said, "then none of you deserve to keep your jobs." The cabin fell into silence. The other passengers were shocked, whispering nervously about the escalating conflict. Some began recording on their phones, sensing that this was a story that would soon make headlines. Carla, though shaken, tried to defuse the situation, but Drake was relentless. The rest of the flight passed in tense silence, with Drake glaring at the crew, the atmosphere thick with unresolved hostility. The rest of the flight was heavy with tension. Alexander Drake sat rigidly in his seat, his jaw clenched tightly as he stared coldly at the flight attendants, who moved about silently, trying to maintain their professionalism. The other first-class passengers exchanged uneasy glances, whispering quietly to each other about the unsettling scene unfolding just feet away. What started as a simple request for a salad had transformed into a high-stakes power play, and no one knew how it would end. Carla's hands trembled slightly as she prepared drinks for other passengers. The humiliation of being publicly scolded for something that was, in her eyes, a minor error weighed heavily on her. But she knew better than to argue. Drake was a man who never tolerated mistakes, no matter how small. What worried her most was what he had threatened: firing the entire crew. Meanwhile, Alexander's personal assistant sat silently beside him, nervously glancing toward the crew and the captain. She had heard rumors about Drake's volatile nature, but witnessing it firsthand was something else entirely. She pulled out her phone, sending a brief message to the airline's corporate office, alerting them to the situation. A preemptive move in case things escalated further upon landing. As the plane began its descent, the cabin remained silent, charged with a palpable mix of fear and anticipation. What would happen when they touched down? Would Drake follow through on his threat? The passengers' eyes flicked repeatedly between the CEO and the crew, sensing the impending storm. The moment the wheels hit the tarmac, Alexander Drake rose sharply, his voice cutting through the subdued murmurs of passengers and crew alike. "This ends now," he said, his eyes blazing with fury. "I will not tolerate incompetence. Not in my presence. Not ever." Without warning, he strode to the front of the cabin, demanding that the pilot open the door immediately. The captain complied, puzzled but aware that this was no ordinary passenger complaint. The airport staff were already informed by the assistant, awaiting the CEO's orders. In a move that stunned everyone, Drake summoned the airline's senior management team, who had been alerted and rushed to the terminal. With cameras rolling, courtesy of passengers who had started live-streaming the unfolding scene, Drake made an executive decision that would reverberate far beyond this flight. He announced the immediate termination of the entire flight crew. Not a single one was to remain employed by the airline. The airline executives, taken aback, hesitated, but Drake's influence and reputation in the corporate world made refusal risky. The crew was asked to leave the plane on the spot, their belongings hastily packed by other staff. Carla, still shaking, gathered her things as the crew exited into a sea of stunned onlookers, reporters, and curious passengers. Social media exploded with clips and commentary. #Showdown and #FirstClassFury trended worldwide within hours. But questions swirled. Was this extreme reaction justified? Was the crew really at fault? Or was this a case of a powerful man using his authority to punish perceived disrespect? The shocking news of the entire crew's dismissal quickly rippled through social media and news outlets. Passengers who had witnessed the event firsthand shared their accounts, some sympathizing with the CEO's demand for excellence, others horrified by the harshness of his response. Within hours, airline headquarters were flooded with calls. Loyal customers expressed concern about the treatment of the crew, while investors worried about potential damage to the brand's reputation. Internally, the airline faced a crisis. How could they replace an entire flight crew on such short notice without disrupting operations? And how would they manage the PR disaster unfolding in real time? Meanwhile, Carla and her teammates grappled with disbelief and anger. For years, They had dedicated themselves to impeccable service, enduring the pressure of high-profile clients like Drake. To be dismissed so abruptly, over what many considered a trivial issue, felt like a cruel betrayal. In interviews, some passengers described the crew as calm and professional despite the CEO's outburst. Airline insiders leaked that Alexander Drake was known for his merciless perfectionism, but that this incident was unusually severe, even by his standards. Social media was a battleground. Supporters of Drake hailed his insistence on quality, praising him as a leader who would not settle for less. Critics called him a tyrant abusing his power, ruining careers over a salad. The airline released a carefully worded statement, expressing regret for the incident but backing Drake's right to expect excellent service. The crew members received severance packages, but many questioned if their reputations would survive the fallout. Weeks after the dramatic showdown, Alexander Drake remained at the center of a storm. Corporate commentators debated whether his reaction was a justified stand for quality or a reckless abuse of power. But beyond the headlines, the story held deeper truths about the fragile balance of authority, respect, and humanity in high-pressure environments. Drake's uncompromising demand for perfection revealed the intense pressures faced by executives who live by high stakes and relentless competition. Yet, his refusal to handle conflict with empathy sparked a backlash that questioned his leadership style. For the crew, the experience became a defining moment. Carla and her colleagues found solidarity in shared hardship and eventually became advocates for better workplace protections and communication training in the airline industry. Their story ignited conversations about dignity and fairness in service jobs, often overshadowed by glamour and expectations. Passengers who had witnessed the incident found themselves re-examining their assumptions about power and privilege. The story was a reminder that even in the rarefied world of first class, humanity and respect must never be lost. In a final twist, Alexander Drake issued a public apology months later. He acknowledged that his reaction was harsh and promised to work on better conflict resolution. Some saw this as a genuine act of growth. Others remained skeptical, unsure if the incident would mark a turning point or merely a footnote in a pattern of extreme behavior. Conclusion: what would you do? This incredible episode raises tough questions. When does the pursuit of perfection become a dangerous obsession? How much power should one person wield over the livelihoods of others? And in the high-stakes world of luxury and elite service, where do we draw the line between demanding excellence and demanding respect? If you were on that flight, how would you have reacted? Would you side with the CEO or the crew? Or is there a middle ground where professionalism and empathy meet? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more stories that peel back the layers of human nature, power, and drama. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes, even a simple salad can spark an unbelievable showdown.